Welcome to Project HeadCanon. This is the 21st video of the Content Crosshair series, the purpose of which is to look at specific pieces of Star Wars media to determine their canonicity within the project. In our sights today are the Dark Empire comics, a trilogy comprising 3 miniseries. Dark Empire 1 was published in 1991 and 2, Dark Empire 2 was published in 1994, and Empire's End was published in 1995. The series are set back to back, so we can treat it all as one continuous story. And here we go. It's 10 ABY, and the Galactic Civil War rages on. Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian have been stranded on Coruscant. Han, Leia, Chewie, and the dynamic duo lead a fleet to rescue them. The group reunites on the war-torn surface, but a hyperspace wormhole appears and sucks up Luke and R2. Meanwhile, the New Republic, specifically Mon Calamari, is under attack by a fleet of world devastators. Luke and R2 are brought to Biss, where they come face-to-face with the reborn Emperor Palpatine. Seeing no other choice, Luke agrees to become the Emperor's new apprentice, hoping to defeat the Empire from within. While the New Republic tries to defend Mon Calamari, Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO fly to Nar Shaddaa to find a way to infiltrate Biss. There, they meet Han's old friends Sala Zend and Shug Ninx. Leia receives a lightsaber from a very old Jedi woman named Vima Da Boda, and then they get chased off-planet by several bounty hunters, including Boba Fett, and sneak their way onto Biss. Han, Leia, and 3PO get captured by Luke and brought before the Emperor. He reveals that he has been transferring his spirit into a series of clone bodies, and that his next plan is to possess Leia's unborn child. Luke tells Leia that he's hidden all the Imperial codes in R2 and helps everyone escape Biss. He then confronts the Emperor, killing almost all of his clones, but Palpatine manages to jump into the last clone. After a brief lightsaber duel, he forces Luke to turn to the dark side, for real this time. Meanwhile, with R2's help, the world devastators on Mon Calamari are forced to turn on each other and are all destroyed. Palpatine and Luke show up in the eclipse. Leia confronts them both and turns Luke back to the light side. Palpatine conjures another hyperspace wormhole, but Luke and Leia break his control over it, and it destroys his body and the eclipse as the 2 Jedi escape. A few weeks later, Luke and Cam Solusar, a redeemed former Darkseid adept, head to Ossus to begin rebuilding the Jedi Order. Leia heads to Nar Shaddaa with Han and Co. to find Vima Da Boda again. After another run-in with Boba Fett and a narrow escape from some Imperial Darksiders, they find and rescue her. Meanwhile, the Emperor has been reborn yet again on Biss. He sends his new second-in-command, a Darkseid adept named Cedrus, to Ossus to capture Luke and Cam. On Ossus, the 2 Jedi make contact with the Yasana, a local tribe of Force users, shortly before an Imperial force led by Cedrus arrives. After a pitched battle, the ancient tree-like Jedi Master Ood Banar sacrifices himself to kill Cedrus, and 2 of the locals, Jem and Rafe, decide to go with Luke and Cam to become Jedi. Luke falls in love with Jem. Meanwhile, above Biss, the Emperor is inspecting a new superweapon called the Galaxy Gun. A New Republic strike team infiltrates the surface of Biss inside a shipment of war droids, but are forced to retreat by an army of alchemical beasts. They're rescued at the last minute by Shug Ninx and Sala Zend, who happened to also be on the planet. Han, Leia, and Vima flee Nar Shaddaa, pursued by Boba Fett, and end up on a steampunk planet called Ganath. The king of Ganath is a former Jedi named Empatogeos Brand, and he tags along with the group. As Luke, Cam, and the 2 Yasana approach the main New Republic base at Dasucha 5, it's destroyed by a missile from the Galaxy Gun. Luke's group meets Han and Leia's group on New Alderaan. The Empire launches a raid on the planet. Jem is killed, but New Republic forces arrive and rescue the others. The good guys regroup, and Leia gives birth to Anakin Solo. Now the Empire is on the upswing again, using the Galaxy Gun to intimidate worlds into submission and force the New Republic military to evacuate their bases and disperse throughout the galaxy. But Palpatine's clone body is aging rapidly. He decides to make baby Anakin Solo his next host body. In his new flagship Eclipse 2, he pursues the Solo family to Onderon. Luke leads a few squadrons of New Republic fighters to attack the Eclipse 2, while he, Rafe, and Brand try to capture Palpatine. Palpatine finds Leia just as the Jedi catch up with him. A battle ensues. Brand is injured, Rafe is killed, Han shoots Palpatine in the back, and Brand sacrifices himself to Palpatine's spirit to save Anakin Solo. He dies, and Palpatine's spirit dies with him, once and for all. A New Republic commando team, including R2-D2, hijacks the Eclipse 2 sending it to Biss and crashing it into the Galaxy Gun. The Galaxy Gun misfires into Biss, destroying the planet and the orbiting Imperial fleet as the heroes escape. The end. Overall, I think the most interesting thing about these comics is the art style. Everything is textured and washed out like a watercolor painting. There's lots of deep indigo, pale yellow-green, hot pink, and turquoise, with occasional splashes of scarlet. Say what you will about the writing, but that color palette is evocative. It does affect the readability of the busier scenes, though, and to me it gives more of a cyberpunk vibe than Star Wars. However, it does make for an apt analogy. These comics make it seem like you're watching an original trilogy story unfold through a warped stained glass window, literally in the art sense as well as figuratively in the narrative sense. The political state of the galaxy has somehow reverted to what it was like during the original trilogy. The New Republic has lost control of Coruscant and is basically back to being the Rebel Alliance, in name as well as in form, fighting asymmetrically, constantly outmatched by the Empire, and with not much in the way of a civilian government. And the Empire suddenly has a massive fleet, which presumably didn't even participate in the war until now, given that nobody seems to have been aware of its existence. The new superweapons, the World Devastators and Galaxy Gun, come off as attempts to raise the stakes compared to the Death Stars, but they're so hyperbolic that they just break my immersion. And remember, these comics came out after Heir to the Empire, justifying the inconsistencies in the state of the galaxy between the Thrawn trilogy and Dark Empire took a lot of work from later authors. But more on that later. Dark Empire shares many features with the Tales of the Jedi comics we covered in a previous video, as both were written by Tom Veitch over the same 7-year period. The tie-ins include direct family lines that stretch across the 4,000-year gap between them. Vima Daboda from Nomi and Vima Sunrider, Modan Kira from Oran Kira, Bodo Baas from Vodo Siask Baas. Ood Banar shows up again on the familiar world of Ossus. We hear about the Kron system supernova, see the Sith tombs on Korriban and the city of Isis on Onderon. Unfortunately, like Tales of the Jedi, this was done before the prequel trilogy came out, which means some of those features, like the existence of multi-generational Jedi families, are now inconsistencies as well. But the parallels run even deeper than that. Luke's arc in Dark Empire 1 is nearly identical to Ulic Qel-Droma's in Tales of the Jedi Dark Lords of the Sith, right down to the 2 back-to-back attempts by his friends to convince him to return to the light side. There were 2 major differences, though. First, Ulic's arc was motivated by his own decisions, where Luke's were largely forced upon him by the Emperor. And second, Leia succeeded where Nomi failed, so Luke got a happy ending where Ulic got a tragic one. Because of those differences, Luke's arc really doesn't resonate like Ulic's did. There's no emotional weight or consequence to it. If there is a way to write a compelling fall and redemption arc for Luke, and I'm not convinced that there is, this is certainly not it. And that brings us to the star of the show, Palpatine. Resurrecting him was a monumentally risky writing decision. I will grant that the in-universe mechanics of his resurrection do make sense, and are handled as well as could be expected. But the mere fact of his return is itself a fundamental narrative problem. It plays into the setting issue I mentioned before, in that it basically resets the galaxy back to the time of the original trilogy. That renders most of Return of the Jedi, including the climactic redemption and sacrifice of Anakin Skywalker, pretty much meaningless. Such a drastic decision could perhaps be justified if it allowed a truly amazing story to be told in its place. But in this case, Dark Empire doesn't have anything profound to say that wasn't already said by the original trilogy. Yes, Star Wars does lend itself to a cyclical meta-narrative at large timescales, but this is too on the nose even for me. So where does that leave us? A comic series with interesting colors that reverts most of the galactic scale developments since the original trilogy, gives Luke a weak and inconsequential fall and redemption arc, brings Palpatine back from the dead only to kill him off for real this time, and delivers the same themes as the original trilogy but less effectively. It's an interesting work of fiction, and an important point in the history of licensed comics, but it has no place in Project HeadCanon. I hereby declare the Dark Empire comics to be entirely non-canon within this project. Whew boy, this was a long and very involved cutting process. While it was fairly easy to delete the miniseries and their individual issues, loose ends proliferated rapidly. First, I also cut the 3 audio dramas that retell the comics. Second, the comics have endnotes containing background info on a lot of the stuff in them. I treated them as part of the comics themselves and cut them. Third, there's a companion piece called Star Wars Handbook 3 Dark Empire, with yet more exposition and background, which I also cut. And fourth, there's the Dark Empire sourcebook for the Star Wars role-playing game. It contains a lot of material that isn't directly affected by the comics, so I went through every article referencing it on a case-by-case basis. The same is true for the Essential Chronology, the Essential Atlas, and all those reference books, which tried to explain how the galaxy could get from the end of the Thrawn trilogy to the beginning of Dark Empire. In broad strokes, the Galactic Civil War used to go Thrawn in 9 ABY, then a secret Imperial consolidation at Biss under Palpatine, then a big re-invasion in 10 ABY, which fragmented into the Imperial Civil War, then another reunification under Palpatine, which is where the comics pick up. Then after the comics, there's another big countersweep by the New Republic and refragmentation of the Imperial territory. After cutting Dark Empire, we can greatly simplify this timeline. Thrawn in 9 ABY, then a single prolonged Imperial Civil War and simultaneous New Republic consolidation from 10 to 11 ABY. In my opinion, this sequence brings the galaxy to pretty much the same state by about 12 ABY to set the stage for the Imperial reunification under Natasi Dala, and there's still room for some interesting stories in that 2-year gap. At smaller scales, though, there are many more loose ends to worry about. Some were simple to fix, like having Empatogeos Brand simply be killed in the Great Jedi Purge. But some yet remain. We now have no records of how Biss or Dasucha 5 were destroyed, what happened to the Eclipse, how Kem Solusar first became a Jedi, the circumstances of Anakin Solo's birth, or how Leia acquired the Tedran holocron. We also have a lot of material in the Crimson Empire comics that's left without antecedent, but we'll cover those in a later video. The most annoying part of this whole process is that the fact of Palpatine's return is mentioned without any citation in probably thousands of articles across the wiki. Phrases like, around the time of the reborn Palpatine, and specific mentions of his apparent and final deaths appear all over the place, and I don't think there's any way to identify them all other than manually. I'll keep fixing them whenever I spot them, but this will probably be a continuous process, and there's no way to even know when it's done. As of me writing and recording this, I've deleted 994 articles, including 368 files, amounting to just shy of 1% of the wiki's total page count, and made 2,761 other edits. So quite a large undertaking, and again, the cleanup will probably take much longer still. But with that, we can say farewell to Dark Empire. Please don't interpret its exclusion from Project HeadCanon as me being dismissive of it as a work of art. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a story that was created to be enjoyed. But for me, it just doesn't connect well enough with the rest of Star Wars, particularly in the post-original trilogy era, to justify keeping it. That's all for this video, so until next time, may the Force be with you.